Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel and thank you for watching. Today's video is quite interesting. I actually got my hands on this beautiful palette by Huda Beauty, which is the Rose Gold palette. This is the remastered palette. I got my hands on this, and when I saw this I thought that why shouldn't I do a comparison video of the Huda Beauty previous Rose Gold palette and the remastered palette, because I've been getting a lot of questions on buying the Huda Beauty palette earlier, but since she's come up with remastered palette, so people are really asking that should they get their hands on this, is it worth the price, because everybody knows that the previous palette had some issues with the texture, with the foiled eyeshadows that it had. But this time it is definitely a new version, and is it actually really good? You should get your hands on it or not. I am going to do a comparison of both these eyeshadow palettes. So what I've done is I have done my base. I am already done with my lipper, my brows and everything, and I'm just going to work with one eyeshadow palette on one eye and the other eyeshadow palette on the other eye. And I am going to show you both the palettes simultaneously and see that if this one is actually a remastered or revamped palette, it's actually worth the price, you should actually get your hands on it or not. So let's just talk about both the Huda Beauty palettes and do a comparison of both of them. This is how the previous palette looked like. This is absolutely clear. You can actually see through the colors of the eyeshadows through this palette, whereas if we compare it with the new palette, this is definitely more gorgeous. Yes, it has Huda Beauty shining all over, and it has this gorgeous beauty on the cover with this metallic beautiful shine. I loved it. It's actually beautiful, but it's beautiful definitely, but if you compare it with this one, I find that these palettes are more handy and you can very well see the colors. What all colors do you have in your palette? It reminds me of that matte palette that you get, wherein you can see all the colors. So I like this one definitely. If we talk about the packaging, it's in a nice sturdy cardboard box, which is also the same for this, but this one is more heavier than this one. This eyeshadow palette says Rose Gold Edition here, so it's definitely nice. When you stack your palettes, you really want to see which eyeshadow palette is this. So this palette was definitely good for actually seeing what palette is there, and this is what there in the new palette as well. So even this palette says remastered Rose Gold palette. So if you stack your palettes, you can very well see that your Huda Beauty palette is lying there. I mean, it's quite easy for you to take out that palette and work. This palette had that clear glass, whereas if we talk about this palette, it comes in this gorgeous packaging, and this has this mirror on this side. Honestly telling you, I'm not a very big fan of having mirrors in my palettes because I never use these mirrors. I don't know, they may be good, but I'm more comfortable with the mirror lying on my table and working with it. So probably the mirror has added more weight into the palette, whereas in this palette is quite lighter in weight. I am going to put these palettes side by side and let you see all the colors. Now if we compare both the palettes, if we talk about the bottom line, this is absolutely the same as in the previous palette. There is no change in the color. All the colors in the previous palette are absolutely the same in the remastered palette as well. Now if we come on top, this shade right here, Bossy, that you see, I'm actually out of it because this was actually my favorite color here. This was more towards the mauvey side, more towards wine and mauve, but now Bossy has been replaced by Risk, which is here, which is a more brighter version of the previous color. The other color was Flamingo in the previous palette, but now they have named it as Dollface, and I feel that this one is a little more pink than the previous one. The third one is this one, which is Shy, and now they've named it as Demure. Definitely this one is more pink and this one is more peach. That's the difference that you can see. This color here is Blessed. Blessed in this new palette looks like this. So if we talk about the formula, both the formulas look really different. I would love to do a comparison in the color as well, because this one looks a little more darker than this one. So if I take this color, so now if we do a comparison of the color looks almost the same on hand. This is from the previous palette and this is from the new palette. This one is definitely more brighter than the previous one, but yes, in the palette they definitely look so different. Now let's talk about these two colors in the previous palette. This one is Bay, which I have really used. I actually don't use this sort of color, but this has been replaced by Bubbly, which is a gorgeous color in the new palette. I actually love this color. The last color in the middle row is definitely Moondust, and Moondust here is this one, and then they say in this new remastered palette, this is the most outstanding color which you can use as your highlighter on your brow bone, your inner corner, all over the face where you want to highlight. So Moondust is definitely the highlighting color here. If we talk about the top row, this is what is actually worked upon. I actually like this color here, which is Angelic, but now Angelic has been replaced by Pink Diamond. Angelic was more pink, more gold, whereas in Pink Diamond looks more mauvey. It has more of mauve undertones into it. The other colors in the upper row, which is Dubai, Fling, 24 Karat, Rose Gold and Trust Fund are almost the same, but yes, they do show a lot of difference in the texture and a lot of difference in the color as well. This is Dubai and this is Dubai here. This one is Fling here. This is Trust Fund, and Trust Fund looks such a beautiful copper shade here. This is 24 Karat and this one is 24 Karat, which is definitely more gold. Rose Gold looks quite dull in the previous palette, whereas Rose Gold is quite bright in the new palette. Let me show you the texture. I'll take this color 24 Karat from the previous palette. This is 24 Karat from the previous palette and this is 24 Karat from the new palette. If we compare the texture, this texture was more chalky. It was more chunky, whereas in this texture looks much more smoother. I think you can very well see the difference in the texture. It's quite nicely visible on hand as well. But now what I am excited about is that are they actually good to apply on your eyes? Because I faced a lot of problem with these textured colors. I actually don't like working with my fingers on eyes. When you really want to be precise, you need to work with brushes. The previous shadow had those texture shadows which were really a task to work with brush. They were an absolute failure when you have to work with brush, because the brush could not pick up pigment from the textured foil shadows. But now the new formula looks great while working with hand. But let's see, does it work the same way with the brush as well? Is it actually good? Is it worth reinvesting? So let's start with the video. I'm going to do this eye with the Rose Gold palette, which is the previous palette, and I'm going to do my right eye with the remastered palette and see what difference does it make in my eyes. Let me just tie my hair and we'll start up with the eyes. That's it. I'm going to use the same brush on both the eyes to see if the blendability is also good, if they blend in the same manner. Let's start without wasting time and let's see. I will start with Sandalwood, which was my favorite transition color from the previous palette. But before that, let me prime my eyes. I'm going to use Stay On Stray from Benefit, and I am going to prime my eyes using this. I'll do the same on the other eye. I will dust it with some powder. And now we'll start with Sandalwood. I will apply this color as my transition. It's definitely a beautiful color and blends well. Now I'm going to clean my brush and use it on the other eye. Now I'll use Sandalwood from the new palette using the same brush, and I will work. I think the color is more pigmented in the new palette. Definitely yes. Just once I took the color and it looks quite pigmented. I actually feel that the intensity of the color for the new palette is much more than the previous one. I actually took this twice and I just took it once, and the blendability also looks great. It's blending well, whereas I feel that both the shadows have a good fallout. So once you take your shadows, they actually fall off quite a lot, which was there in the previous palette and the new palette as well. So this is the new palette, and I've just taken the color once, and this is how it looks like. So the fall off is almost the same, or maybe a little more than the previous one, but the blendability and the intensity of the color looks really nice. Now by taking MAC 217, I'll take the next color, which is Henna, and I will just work in the outer corner of my eye. Henna was also a good color, and they have come up with Henna again in the new palette. This is from the remastered palette, and I'm just working in the outer corner of my eye. Let me tell you that the blendability of the new palette is definitely better than the previous one. The colors are blending like butter. It is really nice. So far, I'm happy with the palette. And now I take the shade, which is Cocoa, and I am going to apply this with this small fluffy brush from Crown, and I will work in the outer corners again. And now by using a fluffy brush, I'm just going to blend these colors together. Now I take the same color from the remastered palette and work in the outer corner again using the same brush. And now I'll blend all the colors together. Trust me, the new palette, the colors are more pigmented. The previous palette was also good as far as the blending was concerned. I used to like that palette, but this one is definitely better than the previous one. Now comes the textured shadows. I'm going to use this color, which one should I use? Rose Gold? Trust Fund? Which one do you like more? I think I'll take Trust Fund, which is more copperish, and I'm loving it. But yes, you really need to struggle with these textured shadows, foil shadows. They were a task to put, but I'll show you. You really need to dig your brush into the shadow. And there was barely anything that you can see on the brush. You really have to work hard, all in vain, and spray Fix Plus on top of this, and then apply. Just see, just in spite of doing so much of effort, you could barely see the color on my eye. And it's actually nothing which is like flawless. No, it's chunky, and I can see that texture here. It's not very smooth, so you really have to work with your finger to get the shadow on. And I'm just digging my finger into this color. Yes. And now I am going to apply it with my finger. But you know what? When you have to work with your finger and when you have long nails, it's actually a struggle. You really can't be very precise. And if you really want to work in those smaller areas, you definitely need to work with brush. So this is how it turned out. Now we come to the new remastered palette, wherein I have a lot of expectations, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that these top shadows should work well with brush, because this is what I want from the remastered palette. I am going to take the shade Trust Fund again. I will clean my brush, dip my brush into this. That's what I got on my brush. Spray Fix Plus and apply it on my lid. If I compare it with the previous palette, the color is definitely being picked up by the brush. I can work with brush on this eye, which is definitely a good thing. I think the color is showing off a little more than the previous one. But it's nothing which is too blinding. It's nothing which is too vibrant. But yes, it did work with the brush well, and I'm happy. Good job. Definitely, the previous palette was more textured. It had more of that grit feeling. You understand when you actually, it's more chalky, it's more crunky. It was more textured. But this one looks more refined, and I actually worked with a brush with this palette, which is definitely a good thing. If I compare both the eyes, this shadow is not that intense as in comparison to this one. This one is more pigmented, but then yes, the pigment is not too overbold, and the texture definitely came out well with my brush. I did not use finger here. I just spray Fix Plus, used my brush and applied this, whereas in the previous one I really had to dig my finger into the foil shadow and then apply it. So I think it's doing good job right now. And now by using a pencil brush, I am going to use the Moon Dust from the previous palette and apply it as a highlighter in the inner corner as well. And now I'll take Moon Dust from the new palette and apply it as highlighter here. If you do a comparison, I feel this one is much more brighter than the previous one. Yes, it's showing well in the inner corner, I feel. Now I'll complete the lower lash line as well by taking the same color, which is Sandalwood and Henna, from the previous palette. Now I'll do the other eye after cleaning my brush. So again, Sandalwood and Henna from the new palette. I will finish off the look by putting some kohl in the inner lash line. This is from Too Faced. And I'll finish off by putting this mascara on the lower lashes. New mascara on the top lash since I've got my extensions done. You can actually put mascara on the lash extensions, but it has to be a normal mascara. A waterproof mascara doesn't work well on lash extensions. This is the final look right in front of you, and this eye is done by the previous Rose Gold palette by Huda Beauty, and this is the remastered palette. Definitely most of the colors are almost the same. Most of them, just about 3 or 4 are different. Yes, now the colors in the new shadow are much more brighter. The matte colors have become more blendable. They actually have more pigment, but I would suggest you to buy remastered only and only if you are a big fan of these foil shadows. Yes, because if you already have the previous palette, I would still not recommend buying again the remastered palette just because of the foiled eyeshadows. Definitely the foiled eyeshadows were coming out well with the brush in comparison to the previous palette, because previous palette working with those foiled shadows was a task and it did not work out the way it should be. But if you want to reinvest in this palette, it would be just for the purpose of getting your hands on these new foiled shadows that she has bought with the improved version, which you can actually apply with a brush. The rest of the colors, trust me girls, it's almost the same. So if you have the previous palette, it is completely your call to get your hands on this or not, but I personally feel that the colors are almost the same. So I would not buy one palette just because of the foiled eyeshadows which are there on the top, because if you see the color has come out almost the same. This one I just applied with hand and this one is just with the brush. If anybody wants to invest in Huda Beauty, definitely this palette is discontinued now. This is not available. You will definitely get your hands on the new palette, which is worth the price. The pigment, the blendability, the colors, the textured shadows are picking up well with the brush, and that's what all you want in a good palette. Obviously the choice of color is beautiful. All the colors in the palette are outstanding, stunning. You can work very well on anybody with this. But if you already have this palette, please think twice before getting your hands on remastered palette. If you are really in love with Huda Beauty colors, you actually love them and you can't do without them, then get your hands on it, because it is absolutely the same. It's just a better version of the previous palette, and that too for just the textured shadows. So that was my opinion on the Huda Beauty Remastered Gold Palette. I am sure that I have helped most of you in deciding whether you should get your hands on it, whether you need to reinvest in it. But it is definitely your call. You have to decide about it. The statements that I have given are definitely my choice. This is what I feel about the palette. Otherwise, I love her. I love her palettes. I love her choice of color. This new improved version is definitely a better version of the previous one. In the end, I would just love to say that I hope that you would have liked the video. In case you like it, please do not forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe, because we will be giving much more information on the channel. I love you all. Stay blessed and keep watching.